Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Tarot Today. I'm here with,
Delphine,
hi, Delphine, and my name is Adrien. Welcome, everyone. So, what are we going to talk about today, Delphine?
we are going to talk about archetypes.
Archetypes. Yes, fabulous. Archetypes. What is an archetype?
Yeah, an archetype is, well, why don't you go ahead and explain it? Because you're really amazing at archetypes.
What is an archetype? Well, first of all, I think the word archetypes comes from Jungian psychology, right? And an archetypes could be seen as an inherited unconscious patterns of thoughts shared by all humans, right? Jung talked about a collective unconscious, and within this collective unconscious, there's a series of archetypes. Now, an archetype is not how can I explain it? For example, in a story, you're gonna have a huge amount of you're gonna have many different archetypes, right? In any stories, you're gonna have the archetype of the hero, you're gonna have the archetype of the trickster, you're gonna have the guide, and so the archetype is kind of like a way to understand a character, a pattern of behavior, an idea, right?
Yeah,
Um, it's like an original model of something, right? So it's not something very precise, and it can and the 22 major of the tarot, the 10, 22 major card of the tarot. Actually, we could do this with the 78 as well, but let's look at the 22. 22 major cards are 22 different archetypes. And I think this is very interesting. This can take us into a very fascinating world to understand, what kind of archetype is representing you at this moment. Um, yeah, and so that's one way to read, right?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So, and then basically Jung introduced the idea that it's like, these archetypes, or what he added to the archetypes, is that they were these sort of like universal psychological patterns that sort of underpinned, um, I guess these concepts, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, look at the fool, for example. The fool represents the archetype of the hero, the one that goes on a quest. He walks, he sort of takes the leap. He decides to go ahead, and so that's the archetype of the hero starting his quest. And if you look at the Lord of the Rings, for example, this people are going to hate me for this, but what's the name of the little hobbit that goes on to the quest that carries the ring? Uh,
Oh no, what Frodo,
yeah, that's it, Frodo.
Frodo.
Sorry for fans of Lord of the Rings, but in Harry Potter, Harry would be the fool. He decides to take the leap and goes to Hogwarts, and that's an archetype, right? This is a
And who would Voldemort be?
Voldemort
Just to,
will be the villain. The
yeah.
archetype is the villain. But you mean in the tarot, who could it be?
Yeah, in the tarot, who would Voldemort be represented by if we were talking about the archetypes?
Well, I think there's a few places Voldemort could be. Voldemort could be
I agree.
death. It could be tower. It could be the obstacles, that he's representing, and it could be maybe the devil that's trying to
Yeah,
stray Harry away when he's trying to manipulate his mind.
right.
And of course, Harry, being the hero, goes through all these different archetypes, and he learns to be maybe, or he meets different archetypes. So you can apply this to every possible stories, actually, which is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, how do we these archetypes are like usually these quite big concepts, right? They represent the underlying patterns usually of behavior and not necessarily of the event. But of course, when we're doing a tarot reading and somebody asks something quite basic, like, okay, how's my day gonna go? And they get the tower in the outcome position. How do you go about interpreting that?
I mean, so you have two ways to look at these cards, right?
Yeah,
You have the archetype aspect and you have the mundane aspect, right? So of course the tower as an archetype would be like everything, not everything, but there's a huge earthquake happening at the moment, you know. But if you want to have a mundane interpretation of the tower, is that whatever you were expecting things to go, well, they're not going to go that way. There's going to be a change. So if it's about how is somebody might be asking, you know, how is my reunion with my friend going to happen? Look like, you know, this afternoon when we're going to have coffee, and you get the tower, you say, well, actually, I think this particular meeting looks like there's going to be either an argument or an explosion, or it's not going to go as planned, or whatever you thought was solid is going to crumble, right? So now we're talking about something very particular, very specific into a specific situation, right? So now we're in a mundane reading and not so much of in an archetype aspect. No, what do you think?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. I mean, I know, like, one question that people love to ask, like, often off the back of love readings is like, okay, like, where am I going to meet my future partner? And as far as I'm concerned, like, I'm always happy to try to answer the question, although I don't think that the tarot always gives us the answer because it's meant to be a surprise. But I remember one time I had this woman ask me, okay, so, you predict that I'm going to, meet my future partner. Okay, where, when, how? And I was like, all right, let's go ahead and see. And I pulled out the moon and I pulled out the Six of Swords. And it was just really interesting because I looked at those two cards and I was like, she's not gonna meet this person while having a mental breakdown like the moon. Like, she's not gonna meet the person while she's confused and bewildered and like going through like a dark night of the soul. It's like I just didn't see that happening. She also wasn't gonna meet him on the astral plane, right? So when I looked at those two cards, I was like, you're going to meet your future partner by the water at night. And that was how I read the moon. And lo and behold, about 3 months later, she came back for a reading and she was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. I met my future partner on the canals of Venice at night.
Oh, beautiful. That's
Yeah.
an amazing example because what would you say the moon is like as an archetype?
Yeah, like as an archetype, it represents the subconscious. It represents confusion. It represents bewilderment. It represents like all of those things that are obscured to us. Like, sometimes there's a certain amount of fear or anxiety that goes along with it, right? It's an internal state that causes a bit of like panic. How would you explain the moon? Because I think the moon is one of those cards that is probably the most difficult to explain because it kind of evades any kind of yeah, I guess just explanation, right?
It is. The moon is the hardest card to teach or for people to get grasp on it because the point of the moon is that you're not supposed to grasp it, right?
Exactly,
You're
exactly.
supposed to kind of go with it and experience the cycles, the changes, right? And I did a workshop, I think it was a month or so also ago, and I had different groups, right? And I had four different groups, and they had to work on a specific card, and each group had four people in it. And surely enough, one group got the moon card, and they had to do exercises around it. And when we all shared the results, that was the one group that did not understand what the exercise was. They went off a completely different tangent. They had a bit of an argument as well. And they had it was really, really I don't want to say funny, but yes, it was funny to
Oh, it was
see
funny.
how the
It was
energy
funny.
of the moon sort of crept in into that little group, and that was the most enlightening thing to see for a teacher, right? And I was like, well, you see,
Well,
guys, this is the moon. This is what you have
right.
to understand it, right?
And that's just it with archetypes, right? It's like, we don't see the archetype, we see what people do,
Yes, exactly. How does
right?
archetype manifest? And this is what
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is how you see it. And the moon is very much like this. It's about arguments. It's about things that are changing. It's about confusion. And there's in French we say la nuit tous les chats sont gris. At night all cats are gray, right? So you can't see.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you. I will take that wisdom away from you.
But in the card of the moon, you sometimes in a lot of decks you can't tell if they are dogs or wolves howling at the moon, right? It's a little bit confusing. And I think it's this idea that the moon is not very clear, and it's the idea of illusion, right? So this is very archetypal, the illusion, the confusion,
Hmm.
Um,
But and also in that confusion, in that illusion, like I mean, how do you often read the moon in like a romance reading? Because I think that like for me, it's like I mean, the moon can also be deeply sexy, right?
Very much so, because with the moon, you have this idea of meeting at night, like you predicted, the example
Hmm.
you gave us, meeting at night and being using your instinct, being
Hmm.
animal-like, right? So
Hmm.
we have this idea of there is an excitement, okay? But now it depends, and I think it always comes down to the question, right? I think the question is half of the reading. If you know what
Yeah.
you're asking, then you'll know how to interpret the card, right? Now,
Yeah.
if if you want to see the outcome of a relationship and the moon alone comes out, I don't think it's a very positive outcome, because it's something that's very changeable, something that's not very clear, and you'd want to see something more like the sun, as a result in my world.
Well,
Um,
I think the sun is like really quite interesting as well because like of course like the sun is supposed to be the most positive card in the pack, right? And I think that like, you know, sometimes when the sun appears in like a future in like the future event in a reading for me, it's like the way that I often interpret it is clarity because like actually usually like joy it really quite evades people, doesn't it? It's like, I mean, if we can see the moon as kind of confusion or something that's obscured, and then see the sun as like clarity or something that is like, you know, shedding light on a situation, I think that that's like one way, sort of like, you know, these really huge cards can actually make quite a bit of sense in like a reading that's maybe just, you know, a little bit more mundane, as we're
they
talking about.
do absolutely. I think I always like to look at the cards in pairs. I think this is
Yeah.
very important especially when you learn the tarot and you don't and you're very new at it and you don't know the numbers and the meanings, always look at the pairs. The moon and the sun. The moon you see at night when it's dark, the sun you see during the day when it's clear and bright, right? So already by understanding this opposition, these differences, you kind of get a grasp of what they're trying to say. But if we look at the sun in the Smithwaite tradition, you have a child on a horse, right? With
Yeah.
the red feather, and there's this sense of innocence and joy. But in other traditions, like the Marseille tradition, the sun actually has two people touching each other, helping each other on the card, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to show it on video here. So you can see the sun is shining, and you have two people looking at each other, helping each other with a wall at the back, which is all about building something together, right? So I think the sun in the mundane reading brings about a big yes, usually. If
Yeah.
it's about a relationship, it's a yes. It's two people helping each other. There's a real sense of true love. This is what my teacher, Philippe Camoin, used to say. The card that represents true love in the deck is not the lovers. It's not the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
the sun, because it's clear, it's beautiful, it's bright. So in a mundane reading, I think the sun would mean that kind of thing, and
Yeah. Absolutely. And like, and the lovers, like, I mean, this is one that I love, right? Because it's like, I mean, everybody, of course, thinks that the lovers is all about like true love, falling in love, soulmate level connections. But when I see it show up in my readings, usually it means that, yes, there's a significant connection on the horizon. But ultimately, it's like, I mean, you know, you're at a choice point. It's kind of just like, you know, what are my values? And like, how are those values going to manifest in a relationship? And how do I want to show up in relationship? What kind of person do I want to be in relationship? Who do I want to be in relationship with? Like, these are the questions that come up with the lovers, right?
yeah, absolutely. The lovers, I think the first meaning of the lovers is a choice, right?
Yes.
Before we talk
Yes.
about
Choice of
love.
union. Yeah.
Yeah, because the choice, when you become aware of a choice, then you can choose I mean, the heart doesn't choose who we fall in love with, but there is this awareness of the other, right? So there is the awareness of the choice of what is in front of us. So the lovers can talk about love if the question is about love. But remember that in astrologically, the lovers is associated with Gemini, right? And Gemini are the twins. Gemini are the two opposition. And the twins long to become unified once more. And I think this tells a lot that Gemini is not a sign, the Gemini is not a sign that's going to tell us, oh, this is about true love, right? But it's about duality. Duality
Duality.
is idea of
Yeah,
choice. So in the mundane reading, if the lovers come up, I'd say, well, you're gonna have a choice, which way are you gonna go? And maybe now it's not time to make a choice because with the lovers, I always feel like, no, 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 no. This is not the time to make a choice. This is time to actually be aware of the choice. And like Gemini would do, gather the information relating to the choice. In the chariot, we made the choice and we move forward, right?
absolutely.
How would you read the chariot as an archetype?
I mean, as an archetype, it's about willpower. It's about self-control. Like, I mean, it's about success at all costs, right? Like, I mean, it's about putting on your blinders and just being like, okay, like I've got a goal and I'm going to make sure that like I achieve it no matter what. I always see the chariot as yeah, just willpower.
Yeah, the hero overcoming an obstacle, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
If we have to say as an archetype, this is, it feels like the hero overcoming an obstacle, you know?
yeah.
But then, as an advice in a mundane reading, what would you say? If the,
Um, I would say to just keep moving forward.
Mhm.
Like to just keep moving forward. Or it's like, I mean, often when I see the chariot, I just say, okay, things are on track. I mean, the chariot is also about control. So I suppose it depends on like what somebody is asking, because it's like, sometimes in a relationship reading, for example, the chariot isn't all that positive because maybe somebody is like, on track, far away from our client or whatever, right? But then like in a career reading, I always see the chariot as extremely positive, extremely, extremely positive. Um, so yeah, I mean, as you've already said, context matters. But like, I mean, I suppose like, how do you read I mean, maybe we should like put the chariot in combination with another card. Like, I mean, what if we have a relationship reading and we have the emperor and the chariot? How would you read that? Like in terms of like, is my partner going to show up for me?
So he's my partner going to show up for me, and I have the Emperor and the Chariot. I would say if I'm reading in a sequence, then I would say there is somebody very stable that's going to help you move forward. This is how I would read it, right?
And that's also really interesting because it's like, I mean, of course, it depends on the spread that we're using. So it's like, I mean, are we reading the cards as a sequence, past, present, future, or are we reading them as combined energies? So I completely agree. Like sequentially, like if we have the Emperor and then the Chariot, it's like, okay, that's positive. But then what if we have the combined energies of the Emperor and the Chariot?
What would you say?
I mean, as far as that goes, like, I mean, that's somebody who's really quite controlled, right? It's like, I mean, we have the chariot and then we also have the emperor. Both of these are very controlled constructs, right? They're
Yeah.
controlled archetypes. I mean, the emperor is like the original father, right? Or the ruler. And then
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, we also have the chariot who you already, I think that you explained the chariot as the hero, right?
Yeah, is the hero overcoming the obstacle?
The hero overcoming the obstacle. So, like, I mean, there's the sense of being quite regimented. And it's like, I mean, this person can fall in love, I'm sure, because I think everyone can, but it's like ultimately, it's like, I mean, there's sort of like a barrier up. It's like, I mean, this is a controlled personality. It's like, I mean, they wouldn't just kind of rush into a relationship. In terms of whether or not they're going to show up for somebody, I suppose it matters. I suppose the context of the relationship matters. Like, I mean, is somebody already in a relationship with the person? Because then that also, changes the meaning. Because then, of course, that would mean, yes, this person will show up for you. But if somebody has just met somebody and has gone on a first date and asks, okay, is this person going to show up and like actually, pursue me or get into a relationship with me? And we get the combined energies of the Emperor and the Chariot, I would say that they're actually quite self-focused.
Yeah. And I think I think I love the idea of barrier that you talked about because there's a very controlled these are very controlled beings. The chariot with its armor, I always feel like it's because the chariot is also ruled connected to Cancer, right? And
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
has the
yeah.
hard shell and the soft body inside. So the chariot has this idea of not really letting people in, right? And sort of like like carrying this armor, a little bit like the emperor would do. The emperor wouldn't really necessarily show his weakness or his soft side, right? So these are two cards that show a very strong front, right? And often with the chariot, I find it's fake it till you make it type of thing, right? Because it's not the world card. It's not an ultimate success, but it is a success. It's moving forward. So
Hmm.
if you combine these two cards, I think I really like the idea of somebody that's really self-protected, somebody that doesn't really necessarily show emotions, or that's very balanced with his emotions, they're very careful or very, measured with those emotions, if that makes sense. But then sometimes I read with one card means one thing and the other. So it could be the situation, if the Emperor is a situation and the Chariot the blockage. Therefore, the Chariot, there's a problem to move forward. Why? Because the Emperor, the situation, is a little bit too stuck in his own ways, you know.
Yeah.
So there's different ways where you can, of course, the spread and the spread and the questions are essential on how you read these. Absolutely, absolutely. It's like the emperor, the archetype of the emperor is the ruler and the father,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But I often read the emperor as also the boss outward,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? So when people actually have questions about work and the emperor comes up, I always, go towards what does the boss want? What does the boss do? What does the manager expect from you? You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, what about the high priestess?
Ah, the high priestess. That's another one which is close, I think, closely connected to the moon because she doesn't really want to be understood.
Yeah, you like, I mean, I love that you say that because yeah, the way that I always describe like the moon and the high priestess is that they like these are two cards that don't want to reveal themselves.
Yes, yes. I mean, they both deal with hidden aspect, hidden aspect. Now, the archetype of the high priestess is, the priestess that connects to the higher beings. She could be a sort of a guide. She could be a type of oracle that delivers a very cryptic oracle, so that could be the archetype, but in a mundane reading, it could simply be a secret that's not being revealed. Careful, somebody's hiding something from you. That could be, and especially if the moon comes up as well. It would be double. I would double down with this. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, yeah, I mean, the high priestess, she doesn't want to reveal herself. So, oftentimes, like, usually when the high priestess appears in a reading and I'm asking about, I mean, of course, like, I feel like I have to contextualize it with a question, but it's like if somebody is asking about feelings, for example, and like when we have the high priestess, there's something about obviously intuition or an inner process going on that somebody is not yet revealing. Like in the context of like a work situation, it's often about like maybe just getting a feeling or that something like how oftentimes our clients will come to us and they're obviously coming to a tarot reader and they have a feeling that something's going on, right? And of course, like when I pull the high priestess, like I mean that to me is just like, okay, your intuition is correct. Like in fact, like I mean everything that's like, hidden under the surface that you're picking up on, like, yes, this is your confirmation. So that's one way that I read the high priestess. Um, it's also interesting because I don't read the high priestess this way, but I've seen other readers read the high priestess as like the other woman or the other man, or like something like in a relationship reading, which I don't know that I necessarily agree with. What do you think there?
Uh, I can see why people would do that, but I find the high priestess asexual. Very
Exactly.
difficult. So
Exactly.
for me, I find it difficult. I mean, in the Marseille deck, she comes up as the grandmother, for instance.
Yeah.
So the high priestess or la papesse, for me, it's very difficult to see this card as the other woman or somebody else
Yeah.
because it's a very asexual woman, a bit like the justice card. These are not.
Exactly. Like I entirely agree with you because yeah, and I also think that it's a bit diminishing to her, right? Because it's like, I mean, this is a very powerful feminine force.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I mean, to I suppose reduce her down to the other woman. It's like, I mean, I just don't think that she falls within that category. So I'm glad that you agree, actually.
Yeah. I mean, there are many queens in the deck, to
Exactly.
as possibly the other woman and what type of other woman we might be looking at here. Or the man,
Other
in
man, yeah.
because I don't think that court cards are gender specific. It's more of an energy, right?
Yeah, and so and I also love that you mentioned this because of course, like, sometimes if I'm doing a career reading, I'll show up as king. And and usually, of course, like I'll show up as like a queen or whatever. That's my signifier.
I
I think that
always
like
show up as the queen girl.
oh, I love that. Of course you do. Who is your signifier? I think
I
we've had
don't
this
use
conversation.
signifiers. I don't
Do you
use
not?
signifiers. No, no, I don't use signifiers because that's taking a card away from the deck, and I know it's a very popular technique, but I don't really use signifiers because yeah, one day depending on the context, I'm going to be one, and in another context, I'm going to be the other. If you
No,
ask to change tires, I'll definitely be a page of a pentacle because I have no idea how to change a tire.
yeah, yeah. No, and I think that that's like an excellent point. Like, I mean, I never take a signifier out of the deck, but of course, like, just in romance, I appear one way and queer, I appear in another way. But I know that sometimes it's like, of course, because I do so many readings a day, as I'm sure you do as well for yourself. Um, I like sometimes there's just a card that keeps repeating, and I'm like, what is this, right? And it's not even necessarily always the court card. Like sometimes for me, it's been the Wheel of Fortune, and I'll just take it out of the pack, and I'll just be like, okay, what are you trying to say?
Hmm.
What are you trying to say? And I ask a ton of questions around it to try to um, figure it out. But I think that I just want to go back to the masculinity and femininity aspect really quick, though, because of course, like, I mean, not all women are queens, not all men are kings. And so I suppose this like also takes us into the Empress and the Emperor, but how would you explain masculine and feminine energy in the tarot?
Okay, so it's interesting because I give this year I'm giving a series of talks about the esoteric the esoteric coding of gender within the Marseille Tarot, and I find
Hmm.
that very fascinating because nowadays we have a lot of contemporary tarot decks where we either try to completely eradicate gender or to I've seen decks like the what I think it's called the Modern Witch Tarot, which is all women, right? And I think we lose a sense of duality and opposition here. Now I understand that there's a need for to become more aware, and to destroy the patriarchy and so on, and I'm in no way disputing that. But within tarot is a spiritual system, and it teaches us duality. It teaches us opposition, and a little bit like in Kabbalah, you have the two different pillars: the pillars of severity, the pillar of mercy, which then mixes into the pillar of equilibrium, the middle pillar. So I think if we the way I see it in tarot is that the masculine aspect is an active principle. The feminine aspect is more of a passive principle. Now, when I say passive, is that the action is interior, is
So
inside, right?
I I love this. I love this because this is how I always explain it. And I think that it's the only way that really makes sense to explain masculinity and femininity because ultimately masculinity and femininity as they stand today in our society are a construct, right?
Yeah.
And this construct is not always healthy and it's not always something that, people feel comfortable with. But ultimately at the end of the day, masculine energy is external. It's energy directed externally, right? And
Yeah.
then feminine energy is energy directed internally. So I absolutely agree with you. Um, it's good that yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
No, I think it's a very good way. And also, when you look at your cards, you look at the numbers. Numbers have a duality as well. I often say odd numbers are usually more active, and even numbers are more passive. So you have a masculine aspect and a feminine aspect within numbers as well. And that is
Yeah.
this. It's very important to realize. when you're reading the cards, when you're understanding the cards. I mean, the moon is 18, the sun is 19. It's the mother on one side and the father on the other. And what's interesting is with the Empress and the Emperor, we have 3 and 4. So the Empress has a creative aspect, right? So she has
Yeah.
a masculine aspect to herself. And the Emperor has a feminine aspect. Why? Because he's number 4, he's stable, he's not going out of his kingdom, he's settled in his kingdom. So there's something really about him building things where he is, right? And that is a feminine aspect, as in a woman creating a life within her body. And that's,
Yeah.
this is the idea behind it, right? So
Yeah.
I think the idea of queen and king, for example, if you look at Madonna, she's a king of pentacles. She's, I mean, we say she's, the queen of pop, but like she's a master business woman, and she couldn't be higher up. She couldn't be more active. She couldn't be more a king of pentacle, right? And so, uh, yeah, I mean, I've gone off in a tangent, but
No, no, but I love it. I love it. It's like, whenever I teach my majors course, it's like, the way that I always explain the major arcana to everyone is basically that they are the spiritual happenings behind everyday events, whereas the minor arcana detail the everyday happenings, right? So it's like, I mean, of course, the major arcana are going to explain, like, why we're attracting the same kind of partner over and over again, or like why our business keeps failing, right? And then it's like the minor arcana are going to tell us the how,
yeah, yeah, that's
right?
absolutely. I think that is a very yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would really agree with you. That's a good way that's a good technique, and it's a good way to understand these cards. Um, one more card. The Wheel of Fortune. Let's talk about the Wheel of Fortune.
I love the
What
Wheel of
did-
Fortune. I mean, I used to hate it and now I love it.
Tell us more. Tell us more. Why you used to hate it? What about the archetype? What about the mundane? Come on.
I mean, so as far as the archetype is concerned, well, actually, let me start with the mundane. With the mundane, the way that I usually see this play out in readings is that it's the wild card. Like, I feel like I can't predict it. I don't always know what the Wheel of Fortune is doing. And, I mean, I'm into divination. I'm into predicting the future. I want to understand what's going to happen. So with the Wheel of Fortune, I think it always just sort of throws me for a loop because it's usually just saying that there's going to be circumstances that are beyond your control that are going to come into a certain situation, right? I mean, the way that this archetype, I suppose, plays out is this is about cycles. It's about fate. The Wheel of Fortune is about turning points. It's about change that happens outside of personal control, right? So I suppose the weavers of fate or destiny. Um, so it's about life shifting in a certain direction, regardless of a person's intentions, right? Like, I mean, there's not really any free will in this card. This is just about destiny. It's about fate. It's about the unexpected. But the way that I see it playing out is that it can represent unexpected changes. It can represent changes in behavior. It can represent things restarting or things stopping entirely. It can represent the cyclical nature of certain situations, right? Like maybe a relationship that keeps repeating, or perhaps even like a job that keeps kind of like, maybe you just keep getting the same position over and over again, but maybe just in different companies, I suppose. But one way that I really like to read the Wheel of Fortune is that it's the card of time, right? It's the card that represents the passage of time. Um, it literally is the wheel of the year. So, that's one way that I really like to look at the Wheel of Fortune because I remember one time, and this is what really changed the Wheel of Fortune for me. I was asking a question on timing, and I got the Wheel of Fortune, and I was so annoyed because I also kept pulling it for the same question. So, it's not like I was getting any additional context, and I was like, okay, what are you trying to say? And what I realized is that it represented a year. And I know that sounds so basic, but in a mundane reading, that was actually just infinitely helpful.
I get that. The
Yeah,
wheel needs to turn. The wheel needs to turn. Yes, yes, yeah. I think people do confuse the Wheel of Fortune with the Wheel of Good Fortune.
I know.
The Wheel of
Yeah.
Fortune is the Wheel of Fortuna, which is fate, which is therefore the year, which is what spins. And for me, the Wheel of Fortune is, for something to go up, something has to come down. You can't keep it all. You can't have, you can't have, 20 degrees at Christmas, type of thing. So, but the advice here for me, the Wheel of Fortune would be like, grab the opportunity, grab
Yeah.
how it's coming. Uh, um, uh,
And that is right. Like that's something else that I love that I didn't mention, but the card of opportunity. It's like the Wheel of Fortune means that an opportunity could be presenting itself. Um, Another thing with the Wheel of Fortune, um, oh, I lost my thought. You go on. It'll come back to me.
No, no, I think, and the Wheel of Fortune is also associated with Jupiter, right? So it's
Yes.
expansion, right? So there's something, this is why it's often seen as a benefic card, but it's also the card where maybe we're stuck in patterns,
Yes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, and then, of course, like also in the tarot, like, if we're talking about the fool's journey and everything, the world is about completion, right? And it's like, I mean, there's this idea that the Wheel of Fortune, it's card number 10. And of course, each suit ends on a 10, right? And the 10s are about completion. So when the Wheel of Fortune shows up, it's kind of like saying, okay, you've reached the end point of this short little journey that we're on to get to the larger end goal. And so there's this idea of the Wheel of Fortune, kind of bringing these events and these circumstances, into our orbit in order to actually reorient us to get to the world, because sometimes we can't fully anticipate what we need to do to actually get to that end result, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes to all of that. Yeah. I think also the Wheel of Fortune, I find in the Marseille deck, there's a little handle on the side. So
I
sometimes
love that.
see who's spinning the wheel, who's in charge of what is going on, and I think that gives us a little bit more agency,
Yeah.
which is quite nice. Cool. Fantastic. Well, I think, yeah, we can wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we've talked about archetypes enough
I
for
hope you
for
guys,
now. For now.
for now, hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you follow, download, our episodes, and we'll see you next week, same place, same time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.